And then there's ISIS. I have a simple message for them. Their days are numbered. I won't tell them where, and I won't tell them how. ISIS will be gone if I'm elected president.
That was Donald Trump reading a foreign policy speech on a teleprompter in Washington today. Here's what Donald Trump himself thinks about that kind of speech.
Actually, I don't use teleprompters. I don't like that. Too easy. Other people use teleprompters. Maybe when you run for president, you shouldn't be allowed to use a teleprompter.
Donald Trump didn't just have a simple message for ISIS. He had a simple message for Russia, a simple message for everyone else in the world, a message that would have been laughed out of any Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing, but was publicly taken seriously by the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today.
I was very pleased with what I heard. I thought it was a great step in the right direction. I thought it was full of substance.
Senator Bob Corker knows that his reelection 2 years from now in Tennessee will depend heavily on Donald Trump supporters. Donald Trump won the Tennessee primary, and so you can expect to hear more supportive words from Senator Corker and other Republicans in states where Donald Trump supporters are the strongest. Joining us now, Phyllis Bennis, a fellow with the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, and Tom Nichols, professor of national security affairs at the U.S. Naval War College. He is also the course director for security, strategy, and forces. Phyllis Bennis, your reaction to the Trump foreign policy speech today?
Well, for someone who claims he was trying to look presidential, you had to dig really deep to find a statement of policy somewhere in there. I found one. I did find one. You had to dig. It was sort of towards the end. And the policy was essentially that we will strengthen and promote Western civilization, not anything that remotely looks like universal values. That, I think, was very important. That's where his so-called foreign policy, such as it is, links with his anti-immigrant xenophobia, the anti-Muslim rhetoric, the anti-Mexico rhetoric, the claims about building a wall. That's where all that fits in. We're not talking any longer about a foreign policy that acknowledges, whether we want to agree with them or not, that there are such things as international law, the United Nations, human rights. Those are off the agenda. What's on the agenda is America first, as we've been hearing, and this notion that America will be strong and a reliable ally, and I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to do it. It was very reminiscent of Nixon's call when he was running for president and said, I have a secret plan to end the war. The secret plan, of course, turned out to be escalation. And I think, although it's clear that somebody like Trump does not come to this, he has a streak of isolationism on the military front, he doesn't come to this moment with an ongoing commitment towards regime change as the default position of U.S. foreign policy, as some other candidates do. But he does have an absolute inability to articulate anything remotely resembling what diplomacy might look like, what a non-military approach might look like, what a successful way of dealing with ISIS might look like. So one has to wonder what, if he were in a position of power, which I think would be a very dangerous reality, what we would then see is, I think, an immediate grip towards the military. That would be his instinct, because he doesn't have anything else.
His secret plan to make ISIS instantly disappear when he becomes president is not the only secret wrapped into this speech. Let's listen to what he said about making a deal with Russia.
Some say the Russians won't be reasonable. I intend to find out. If we can't make a deal under my administration, a deal that's great, not good, great for America, but also good for Russia, then we will quickly walk from the table. It's as simple as that. We're going to find out.
And what we didn't find out is, what would the deal be about? Is it a trade deal? Is it a negotiation about arms? Is it about Ukraine? We have absolutely no idea. And Professor Nichols, you get the impression that Donald Trump believes that the United States of America has deals, just these things called deals, with all the big countries and maybe all the countries in the world. And you just negotiate that deal, and then that country's taken care of.
I think Phyllis is being too kind. She actually found a message somewhere in there. I looked and I found nothing. I think that's imposing a certain amount of intellectual order on a speech that was just a lot of chaos and word salad.
It was only one line, just one line.
I think Trump has never expected to get this far. I think this is a candidacy that got far down the pike, much further than his advisors or he expected it to. And I think a bunch of his advisors got together and said, well, we're this far down. You're supposed to give a foreign policy speech. So here's a bunch of slogans. Say that you're going to make everything better. You're going to make everything awesome. You'll make some deals. You'll fix it. You won't be President Obama. You're going to be awesome. And that's his foreign policy. There was nothing to hang anything on in there. That was the first thing I thought about that Russian deal. We'll make a deal with Russia. About what? We'll make deals with China about North Korea. We'll make deals with Mexico. There's no content to any of this, as is true of most of Trump's statements.
Well, Phyllis, there's the spot where we'll make a deal with China because China's going to like Donald Trump better. And then there's the spot where we will have a trade war with China.
Yeah, you know, this goes to the question of substance. There's no clarity. There's no actual policy here. It's interesting. I mean, this is coming from a man who thinks somehow that ISIS is getting rich off Libyan oil, when anyone who knows anything about either Libya or ISIS or Syria knows that the oil that ISIS is able to sell comes from Syria. In Libya, the ISIS forces, whether they're tied to ISIS in fact or not, those who claim to be part of ISIS, are nowhere near any oil production. So he doesn't seem to know the difference between Libya and Syria.
I seriously doubt that Donald Trump can find any of those places on a map or cares about them.
Tom, you've written speeches, drafts of speeches for Republican senators in the past about foreign policy issues. When I look at this and I realize there was staff involvement in writing it, I can't imagine what that was or who those people are. And it certainly feels like there was a heavy editing hand by Donald Trump to make it simpler than whatever it was they delivered to him.
Well, he clearly went off script in a couple of places. He wasn't going to make just good deals. He was going to make great deals. He threw in his trademark, believe me. And the speech itself read like people had just cut up articles from various conservative journals and the New York Times and the Washington Post and whatever they'd read that day, threw it in a hat, picked it up, and then pasted it on a teleprompter. But that's, again, when Donald Trump gives a speech, if he's not talking about himself, if he's not talking about his polls, if he's not talking about how awesome he is, he gets lost very quickly. And I think, truthfully, I don't think he understood half of the things he was actually saying in that speech. I think he was struggling to keep up with it because I think most of those subjects are just over his head.
Phyllis Bennis and Tom Nichols, thanks for joining this discussion tonight. Appreciate it.